Hey everyone, my name's Alexandra and I am a watercolor artist. We are in the middle of December, coming closer and closer to Christmas, and I've had some of you asking me to show you how I paint my ceramic Christmas ornaments. So today I'm going to show you guys on one of these ornaments. If you guys are following along, you can buy ornaments either from Etsy or Michael's. There's a few different places that you can find them. Otherwise, if you want, feel free to just grab a paper, draw out an ornament, and follow along the same way. Let's get started. I'll list the supplies that I'm using today in the description down below, but just for a quick overview, I have smaller paintbrushes just because my ornament is small, 2 cups of water, one for clean, one for dirty, and for paints, you guys can choose whatever Christmassy colors you'd like. So the first thing that I'm going to do is paint some little pine branches onto my ornament. So for this one, I'm just going to do a Christmas mix of things. So we're going to do some pine branches, some berries, and a few flowers. So starting with my smaller paintbrush, here I have Opus Allegro number 2. I'm going to go into my green, and because I want it really wintry, I'm using a nice deep forest green here. And I am just going to paint some tiny little branches spread throughout my ornament. So I have a tutorial on winter florals that will go a little bit more in depth into this, but the idea is that with these branches, you're painting very feather-like lines. So I did one long line in the center and I'm doing little lines coming down towards it. So because the ornaments are ceramic and they're a lot more porous, it tends to soak in the watercolor. So usually the first layer dries lighter. So I like to paint that layer and then I'll go back in with an even smaller brush and add more detail. So again, I'll show you for this next one here. I'm painting one line down and then I'm doing a ton of tiny little lines heading towards the center. And the idea is that they're not all super straight and rigid. I'm kind of changing direction, staggering them a bit, just to give it a nice and natural look. So I'm going to do a couple more, but I want to make sure that I'm leaving room for the flowers that I'm going to paint. So again, the lines are really loose. So I'm going to leave it at that. I could add a few more if I want later, but now we're going to go in and paint a flower. Because I decided to go with this sort of rust colored ribbon for my flowers that I'm going to paint, I'm going to stick with that and match the color. So I'm going to go with this paint that I have over here that's kind of a rust brown color. Just going to mix a little bit more of it. So for these ornaments, I want to paint a super simple rose. So I'm starting with my paint more watered down, and I can add some detail as I go, but on my ornament, what I'm doing is I'm painting little partial circle shapes. So it's kind of like C shapes, and I'm working my way around building the outside of the rose. So again, it's starting super light, but I'm gonna add some layering as I go. So while it's still wet, I'm just gonna go in with a bit of a darker color and just dot it in there, and then I'm gonna let that dry. So we're gonna do a few more of those. So starting with 2 little half circle shapes, C shapes, I'm working my way out. I'm making sure to leave white space in the center. If you guys wanna see a more detailed tutorial on how to paint these types of really loose roses, then let me know in the comments below. Also, this is something that sometimes is easier to practice larger scale, so you can use a bigger paintbrush on your paper, and then it'll make it a little easier when you move to something that's so small as these ornaments. So the idea is that with every element that I'm painting on this ornament, I'm trying to equally stagger it around just so that it looks nice and balanced. So we're gonna add another one down here. And again, just doing those little half circle shapes, but I'm making sure to leave white space. That one's kind of on the edge there, and then I might stick half of another little one in right down here. Okay, perfect. So now that some of those have dried, I'm gonna go in and add another layer of color that's just a little bit darker and brighter. So I'm just mixing up some more of my paint here. And the idea with this second layer is that we're just adding more depth and detail so that they stand out more. So I'm mixing sort of this orangey brown color. And now I'm gonna go in to this first one that I painted, and I'm making sure that my paintbrush is not too watery. The color comes through nice and dark when I test it on my napkin. And I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna paint two little half C curves. So it's still a little too light, so I wanna get some more paint on my paintbrush here. Okay, and now, essentially what I'm doing is following the shape that I've already painted. And I'm just adding definition by painting these half circles and really giving it that rose shape. I'm making my lines wider as I head towards the outside, which will help make it look like the flower is opening up. All right, so now we're gonna do the same thing for the rest of the roses. So it's a super simple detailing that's being added, but it'll just make your painting stand out so much more, and especially when you're painting on ceramic, because it tends to soak in the paint so much, it's nice to add those layers, add that definition. So now that we've done that, we're gonna go back into our pine branches and add some detail. So I have a really, really tiny brush here that I'm gonna use just because I want to make them stand out. So I'm going back into the same green that I was using before. Okay, so now that I have lots of paint on my paintbrush, I'm going to go in and paint over top of what I already painted, but this time I want the lines to be more fine and with more definition. So I'm gonna start with that single line down, and I'm gonna do my really fine lines working my way in, but I'm trying to let that first layer that I painted show through. So just like I did with the roses, I like to do this to add more depth to my paintings. So really fine line. And then multiple little ones coming in towards that center line. And what you guys will see, especially as I'm adding this darker layer, is that my little needles that I'm painting that are coming in towards that center stem are not super rigid, not super straight. I'm kind of changing the direction of them a little bit, overlapping. All right, so that is all we have for the pine needles, branches. Now I'm gonna add in some leaves. All right, so for the leaves that I'm going to add to my ornament, I wanted to add in some gold leaves. So I have my calligraphy ink that I use here, and we're gonna use that for the leaves. I find on Christmas trees, especially when you have all the lights and things shining, it's so nice to have something that has a bit of iridescence to it. So I love adding gold to all of my ornaments. So I have my ink here. I get my paintbrush slightly damp, and I'm gonna go in to paint. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with a super skinny gold line for the stem of the branch, and then we'll add our leaves in. So the line that I'm painting is not gonna be super straight. I'm gonna have a little bit of a curve to it. And the idea is that I'm just sort of filling in the gaps of where I've already painted. So now I'm gonna go to the top of the branch. I'm putting the tip of my paintbrush down and applying pressure as I pull back. And for this one, I'm just gonna do 3 little leaves. So I'm not quite attaching my leaves that are on the side to the stem in the middle. I'm gonna do that after, just by adding a line. Okay, so we'll fit another one in this corner here. Starting with that skinny line down. Tip of my paintbrush is down, applying pressure as I pull back. And I do have a few tutorials on how to paint leaves that go quite a bit more into detail. I'll probably add a second layer to these just so that they really shine with the gold ink. So now I'm gonna do another one down here. So as I've been doing with the rest of the elements on my ornament, I'm just trying to space everything out so that it fills out the whole ornament. So if you're painting round ones, flat ones, or even if you're just doing this on paper, the idea is to start with one element at a time and evenly space it throughout your image, so throughout your ornament. And then we're just adding the tiny little lines to attach the leaves to that main stem. So now I just want to fill in some of the empty spaces. So I'm going to do one little leaf at the bottom here. And then I'm going to do a couple at the top. Just move that ribbon out of the way. All right, and I'm just gonna let that dry a little bit, and I didn't quite shake my ink enough, so I'm gonna add a second layer to some of those just to really have the gold stand out more. All right, so now all that's left to do is to let that gold ink dry on our ornaments, otherwise we are all done. If you guys followed along with this video, make sure to take a picture of what you painted and send it to me on Instagram at Alexandra Victoria Studio. I absolutely love to see what you guys are painting, so please do share. If there's anything else that you guys want to learn that's either Christmassy or wintry, then leave a comment below and I'll try to include it in my future tutorials. Otherwise, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this channel and like this video. I'll see you next time. And I wanted to use my gold ink, so just give me a minute while I find it.